Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. The City Council recently approved a slew of nicknames for New York streets, one of them Tin Pan Alley, memorializing the stretch of West 28th Street between 5th and 6th, the mecca of music publishing in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. George Gershwin quit high school to work as a song plugger there in 1914. Irving Berlin sparked an international dance craze with Alexander's Ragtime Band, born in Tin Pan Alley in 1911. But how was Tin Pan Alley born? Who named it? Well, for that, we turn to the man the Wall Street Journal called the restless genius of American etymology, Barry Poppick. Next. Barry Poppick, I'm delighted to welcome you to the program. And for our viewers, you should know that this guy contributes his wisdom and his genius to so many publications: the Oxford English Dictionary, the Dictionary of American Regional English, the Historical Dictionary of American Slang, and the Yale Book of Quotations, among others. Barry, you're a busy man.
Thanks. I do what I can, and I try to help others.
Well, you sure are helping. Let's start with Tin Pan Alley, Barry. How much time have you spent tracking the origin of that phrase, that name?
Well, Tin Pan Alley, I did it about 25 years ago. I was going through the New York World, 1903. I was actually looking for hot dog. I was not looking for Tin Pan Alley. I realized the New York World was really good on Sundays. So I checked down all the Sundays because they had extra supplements on Sunday. And this was May 3rd, 1903, the New York Evening World. And all of a sudden, they had this huge article on Tin Pan Alley. And it appeared in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch a week later, May 10th. And that was by Roy Cardell. And when Tin Pan Alley was officially landmarked, the New York, the Landmarks Commission, they said, where does Tin Pan Alley come from? One of the authors they suggested was Roy Cardell. And I left it at that for many, many years. And that's what you have to do.
What now do you think is the origin of Tin Pan Alley?
Okay, well, we went through the New York Morning Telegraph was a tremendous publication. It was the authority on Broadway. It was the authority on vaudeville. It was the authority on turf racing, which is where I found the Big Apple in the Morning Telegraph in the 1920s. And I found Tin Pan Alley, the New York Morning Telegraph, 1903, January 16th, 1903. The first citation, Tin Pan Alley, and I said, huh. Well, that just beat my citation of May 3rd, 1903. So obviously it didn't originate in the world. It possibly originated in the Morning Telegraph. So what I do is I crank up the databases like newspapers.com. I search Tin Pan Alley, and I search Morning Telegraph. And all of a sudden there's a citation 1935. This person named Robert H. Dury, and he passed away, and he gave his obituary to the Associated Press. And he said, by the way, I'm dying, whatever, here's the obituary. I coined Tin Pan Alley, it was me. So this Robert Dury, he said, I was walking down 28th Street with Epes Sargent. And Epes Sargent was perhaps the first vaudeville critic for the New York Morning Telegraph.
Yeah, I think Epes was, I believe, a writer and a poet and an editor.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
He supposedly did the first book on screenwriting as well, and he did a book on theater management. He was very influential, and they were walking down together. Robert Dury, he was head of the Orpheum Circuit in New York. He would book people, and so they would know each other. And then they heard all these pianos on both sides of the street. And they said, boy, this is like tin pans. And it said, wow, this is Tin Pan Alley. And supposedly, Epes Sargent said it the next day in the New York Morning Telegraph.
You're pretty sure it was Epes Sargent in the Telegraph in 1902.
1902, yes.
But you're still working on it 25, 26 years later.
Still working on it because, now I have these additional clues. And supposedly, there was a story in a few years before the obituary, in 1933, where this Robert Dury made the same claim, and Epis Sargent chimed in that, wait a minute, he's a little delusional. Basically, it was all me. It was not him. It was all me. So, but that's the origin of Tin Pan Alley. Tin Pan Alley is known for many famous songs. I love the musical. There's a great Broadway musical. It should run forever. It's called 42nd Street.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and
one of my favorite song and dance men of Broadway, Jerry Orbach, who I had the honor of getting to know pretty well in the last 10, 11 years of his life. Jerry Orbach was in 42nd Street, among so many other things. Anyway, so we have Tin Pan Alley, but while you were answering my question, you mentioned you were actually looking for something else, hot dog, the coinage of hot dog, which you're known for tracking down as well. We might as well go to that. What can you tell us about hot dog? I think in reading from your website, which is barrypopick.com, by the way, folks, you ought to check it out. It seems like what you're in the business of doing, among all other things, it could be simplified as busting myths. Trying to find the reality instead of the myths, and there are plenty of myths about hot dog.
Supposedly, the Polo Ground myth was the biggest myth, that Thomas Aloysius Dorgan, he was called T.A.D. Tad, he was a cartoonist for the New York Evening Journal, and he was at a baseball game, and he saw people say, get your red hots, hot dogs, red hots. No, actually, they said red hots. And he was going to say, red hot dachshund, and he didn't know how to spell dachshund, and supposedly he spelled hot dog instead of hot dachshund. Now, that story is incorrect in several ways. First of all, it wasn't a baseball game at all. It was a 6-day bicycle race, and second of all, it wasn't in the Polo Grounds where the New York Giants played baseball. It was at Madison Square Garden, the original Madison Square Garden in Madison Square. And it was a 6-day bicycle race. And he actually did say the word hot dog in his cartoon. We have the exact cartoon, and it's from a 6-day bicycle race. Now, how did this thing start? Harry Stevens was a very popular guy.
With all that crappy food, Harry Stevens.
He sold hot dogs to all the stadiums, basically, the Harry Stevens organization. And people asked him, where does the term hot dog come from? And he said, this guy, Tad Dorgan, he did this cartoon. It was at a baseball game, and that's it. So it was Harry Stevens who spread it. These things are spread. It was not malicious. He didn't do it. He just wasn't a scholar. He did the best he could. He gave an answer. It was wrong, but he gave an answer. So then
so bottom line, what do we think we can say about hot dog? It's the early 1900s and at that bicycle race in Madison Square Garden?
Well, first, I looked at humor magazines. There were several humor magazines. New York City was known for humor magazines. Has the humor magazine Puck. Puck building. Had the humor magazine Life and the humor magazine Judge. And I looked through all the humor magazines, and the hot dog was a staple. That dogs were ground up and served into sausages was a staple of humor in all the magazines. They didn't quite use the name hot dog, but they did that. And then I looked for a humor magazine at Yale University. I looked for college humor magazines, the Harvard Lampoon, and I looked for the Yale Record humor magazine, and I found hot dog at Yale in the 1890s. And I said, wow. Okay. And for many years, that was the first citation of it. And then, of course, comes these digital databases, and I was wrong because we found earlier ones. We found hot dog to the 1800s, and I found it in the 1880s. And the first citation appears to be from Philadelphia, which they said, I'll have the dog sauce. They call them dog sausages, dog sausages, and they call them dog sandwiches. Now, it actually is much further back than that. The term dog sausage actually goes back to the 1840s. So they didn't call them hot dogs then, but they called them dog sausages.
But you think that the earliest citation for hot dog is Philadelphia in the 1880s?
Yeah, about the 1880s. And then it spread all over. It spread to Tennessee, it spread to New Jersey. Uh, and actually, there was a song called Where, Oh, Where Has My Little Dog Gone?
Right.
Remember, you probably heard, oh, where, oh, where. Yeah, and then one of the things is that, oh my God, he turned into a sausage. So where, oh, where is my little dog gone? It does not mention the word hot dog, but it gives you exactly the information of the term why it's called a hot dog.
Yeah. Okay.
Dogs, yeah. So that's it. And later, of course, Coney Island is known for hot dogs. Nathan's, of course, is 1916, which is the hot dog had been used much before that. But the sausages themselves were called Conies or Coney Islands. And actually, that doesn't even come from Coney Island. It comes from Detroit. If you've been to Detroit, you go for Coney's. So, we have, you're researching one thing, it leads you to another, and this leads to another. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of sources, and you do the best you can,
It's there are rabbit holes galore in your profession here, aren't there? Which leads me to the question, Barry, how did you get involved in this? Why and how?
Well, I was always interested in words and phrases, and I was in the New York Public Library. I was researching something, and Gerald Cohen, professor of the University of Missouri Rolla, now it's called the Missouri School of Science and Technology, and Missouri University of Science and Technology. And he was signing in, and I chatted them, and he said, "Oh, I'm researching the Big Apple. I'm from Missouri." And I said, "Wow, where does the Big Apple come from?" And he said, "Oh, it comes from horse racing, and I'm researching some additional reels in the New York Morning Telegraph." And I said, "Wow," and we kept in touch. And then he went back to Missouri, and I said, "Wait a minute, I could do more research. I'm here in New York. I go to the New York Public Library every day. I could do this for you." So I was researching it, and I found, wow, this guy, John J. Fitzgerald, he admits, I coined the Big Apple. It's my term. I heard it from this African-American, well, they call him Dusky stable hand in the fairgrounds in New Orleans. And I found that, and I said, wow, that's amazing. And then
just to make it clear, John J. Fitzgerald was a writer for the newspaper, right?
For the same Morning Telegraph. Yes,
the same Telegraph.
The same Morning Telegraph.
And he's saying that he heard that term, Big Apple, from the stable hands at the fairgrounds, the New Orleans racetrack.
Yeah, they said, "Where are you shipping this winning horse after meeting?" And they said, "Well, we ain't no bullring stable. We's going to the Big Apple." The Big Apple meaning the big reward. It's a metaphor. And I was going through, we found that John J. Fitzgerald used Big Apple, so I went back in time. I figured, okay, we know that Big Apple's there in 1928, so let me just go back 1927, 1926, and then 1926 I found the explanation. And right before that, 3 days before, that was December 1st, 1926, I found the Big Apple explanation. 3 days before, I found the origin of the Great White Way.
You're bringing up so many of the terms that I want to discuss with you. I think I should let the viewers know, since you mentioned Dr. Cohen, Gerald Cohen, didn't you and he write a book about the hot dog?
Yeah, well,
in 2004.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've covered hot dog, and you mentioned Big Apple, and you're talking about where it came from with John Fitzgerald and the stable hands at the racetrack. But I still want to get back to what nailed this for you. That this is something I want to do. Was it just that research that you were talking about with Professor Cohen?
Yeah, and well, we did the Big Apple, and then I found the 1924 citation around the Big Apple with John J. Fitzgerald, where he admitted it again. And I said, wow, this is just amazing stuff. And then I did. He said, well, I'm doing work on hot dog, and then we did hot dog, and then we started doing dude, and then And then I said, okay, well, I'll do the Windy City as well. And that was wrong. And I'm just saying, wow, I'm doing everything. And then, okay, if I did hot dog, I could do hamburger. If I did Big Apple, I could do Windy City. And then I became friends with people at the American Dialect Society. I became friends with people at Dictionary of American Regional English. And then they were doing the Historical Dictionary of American Slang was coming out. And so it all came together. And then I said, wait a minute, all these newspapers will be digitized, and I'll be the first one. I'll be in the position to do all this stuff. And that's what put me there. So that's how it happened. So
you were swept away by the wave of etymology, and I'm glad you were, because you've given us, as they say, barrypopick.com. You look at that website, the citations, there are thousands of them for foods, for drinks, for everything. You need to look at that. And you mentioned hamburger. I want to come back to hamburger, but no, let's talk hamburger now. Tell me about hamburger.
Well, hamburger was Hamburg steak. And Hamburg steak, why did they call it Hamburg steak? It's from the city of Hamburg. They had these Hamburg America lines, and it came from Hamburg to New York City. And it came right to Manhattan, a very, very popular line. And they had the Hamburg steak, and that's why they called it Hamburg steak. And the term hamburger comes from Hamburg steak. Now the question is, when did it become a steak? And someone say, hey, let me put it between two slices of bread, and then we'll call that a hamburger. We'll never know exactly the first guy put it between two slices of bread, but we know that the term hamburger was used in 1883 in the New York Sun in New York City. Now, the problem is that there were many, many later claims to hamburger. In fact, New Haven, they claim that Louis Lunch served the first hamburger in 1896. Yeah. And I go, wait a minute, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. The Library of Congress supposedly credited it Louis Lunch. That's wrong. I moved to Texas in 2006, and I lived there to 2013. And while I was there, someone said, wait a minute, we have this myth that, they didn't know it was a myth. They thought it was the truth, that Texas gave birth to the hamburger, that this one guy in Athens, Texas, Old Dave, and he went to the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, and they asked him, what do you call it? And he just picked the name hamburger out of the air. And I said, wait a minute, that's all wrong. 1904, 1896, we have hamburger citations. In fact, that's not even the first hamburger citation in Texas. We have hamburger citations in Texas in 1894. So how can you say it began in the World's Fair in 1904? This is completely wrong. But the Texas legislature, they do whatever they want.
Well, there's another myth that we were talking earlier about, all these myths, and that you have to punch holes in them. And there's a myth that some town in Wisconsin, Seymour, Wisconsin, not far from Green Bay, claims it is the home of the hamburger, which of course is nice for them, but it is not true, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely it's the Hamburg steak that did it, and New York was calling them hamburgers. And in fact, hamburgers were very, very popular in the 1880s. I have many articles of hamburgers served around Park Row. Park Row, they had all the journalists, all the people from City Hall. They went out to these restaurants around Nassau Street, and there were many popular restaurants there and on the Bowery as well, and that they served hamburgers. The question is, of course, when they put it between two slices of bread, and I really can't figure that out, but I know they're eating hamburgers.
Okay, you mentioned the Library of Congress, which leads me to this question, because I understand they wrote to you not long ago, the Library of Congress, and saying, we want to archive your website. Briefly, what's that about? I mean, we understand they want to archive your website, but
I have no idea. I got this letter out of the blue. They said, you have a lot of food entries. I have about 7,600 food entries. I'm trying to get up to 10,000 soon. I did another few today. And they said, we would like to archive it. And I said, sure, do it. You can take whatever you want. Do it.
And have they done it yet?
They might have. They haven't. They contacted me a few years ago, and I haven't been in touch with them since. So I have no idea about that.
Before we run out of time, I wanted you to talk to me about two women you're looking into in the history of New York. Two female models, one by the name of Hetty Anderson, and one by the name of Audrey Munson, who posed for many of the civic statues, if I understand this correctly. What can you tell me about those two women?
Okay, well, first of all, again, I was looking in 1913. Supposedly, Coney Island banned the word hot dog in 1913. So I was looking at
Really?
newspaper. Yeah, because they didn't like hot dog, they wanted Frankfurter. The hot dog, was insult to
Okay.
dogs and whatever. So I was looking, and then I was looking in the New York Sun, and again the Sunday supplements, because Sunday is a better day. They have all the stuff, and I found this article. All New York praises Miss Manhattan, Audrey Munson, and I go, wow. This one woman posed for all these statues. I never even heard of her. And then I look and I said, well, she must have died sometime. And I looked, the New York Times, they have a death index, and I checked Munson, and her name was not there. And I said, wait a minute, she's still alive. And of course, she still was alive. And she died at 104 years old in 1996.
Wow.
And
Wow.
she died in obscurity. She was buried in an unmarked grave. Hetty Anderson is still buried in an unmarked grave. They finally gave a tombstone 20 years later. The town of where she's buried, New Haven, New York, gave Audrey Munson a simple tombstone. She finally has a Wikipedia page. Hetty Anderson finally has a Wikipedia page. But at that time, this was the 90s, and I said, wait a minute, they're still alive. I wrote to the Motion Picture Library in California. She was a motion picture star. She was the first person to pose nude in film. She was
Really?
a very, very famous model, and she did film.
This is who now? Which?
This was Audrey Munson.
Okay.
This was 1915. She was a World's Fair girl. San Francisco had a World's Fair. They wanted to say, we're back from the earthquake, come to San Francisco. And so they had this huge World's Fair. It's called the Panama Pacific International Exposition, 1915. And she was the World's Fair girl. She was on the World's Fair coin, and she posed for like 70% of all the sculptures there. She posed every woman you see at the PPIE in San Francisco. That's Audrey Munson. And then she did the movies. Then she went from there to the movies, and she was the first silent film movie star, the first one to pose nude. Well, supposedly there are others. It depends what do you call a film? What do you call this? But for a major film, she was the first one. In fact, I'm trying perhaps to give her a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame as a silent film star. I'm trying to get both these women on postage stamps to be the models who posed for statues all over the United States, not just for the World's Fair, not just for New York City. For New York City, they both take credit for civic fame on top of the municipal building. The article I was reading, which I found in 1913, it credits Audrey Munson. Another article, the same time in 1913, credits Hetty Anderson. They don't mention Hetty Anderson by name, but they were both credited. Now it's possible they can both be right. It's possible, because what sculptors did, they had many women sitting, because women can't sit all many hours at a time, and they could say, well, I'll use her face, but I'll use her feet. So it's possibly the feet are one person and the face are another, the body's another. So no, it's very, very possible they could both be right. So we don't know. And well, we can solve this, of course, by digitizing New York City newspapers. The Morning Telegraph absolutely must be digitized. They're going to have a story on Audrey Munson. They're probably going to have a story about Hetty Anderson. I don't know where it is. If we digitize it, I could find it in 5 minutes. The New York Evening Journal, which Tad supposedly did the hot dog, that's still not digitized. In fact, the Evening Journal coined the term Yankees. New York Yankees were first used April 7th, 1904. They called them the New York Yankees. Yankees returned from the South. That's the first headline, New York Yankees. That's still not digitized. So we have to get these things digitized, and then we can find out more about Audrey Munson and Hetty Anderson. They both face each other. You go to the Plaza Hotel, the woman in the Plaza fountain, that's Audrey Munson. And so you could see her right there. Right opposite that is the Sherman statue. Leading the Sherman statue is Victory, and that's Hetty Anderson. So they face each other. Hetty Anderson, we know, posed for US coins as well. She posed for a coin by sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens. That's supposedly the most beautiful coin ever. She's Lady Justice. She posed for another coin by Adolf Alexander Weinman, and that was the Liberty half dollar, the walking Liberty half dollar. So she posed for at least 2 coins, and she posed for perhaps 3 coins, an Indian coin, where they used the bust of her head. So why should these people, be on postage stamps? Well, they post for our coins. They post for our statues. You don't know it's them. So it's a big mystery. And I discovered that, and I said, wow, now people are learning about Hetty Anderson and Audrey Munson, but 20 years ago when I first did this stuff, no one knew anything. Audrey Munson also posted for the first US World War I poster. They had all these posters, join our war effort. The first one was Audrey Munson. The first woman in a poster was Audrey Munson.
I said at the top of this show in the introduction that Barry Popik is the restless genius of American mythology. That's what the Wall Street Journal called him. I'll call him that. Everybody should call him that. We didn't even get to Great White Way or the origin of the Bloody Mary or the origin of New York City superlatives for our police department, the finest and the bravest and all of those things. There is so much that Barry Popik can offer us, and this is just a sample. Barry, I should have you back like once a year so that we can catch up with what you're involved in. How about we do that?
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely.
I really thank you for this today. It's been a delight.
My pleasure. I could talk for a long time.
Yes, you can. And it's all just amazing. And I know you want to get back to the books and digging out some more. As you said, you put in a few citations already today, but I'm sure you'll do 8 or 10 or 15 more. Thank you for your time. BarryPopik.com, folks. This guy's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.